Hello and welcome to the live podcast, Win More on Purpose. Today we have David Konigsberg with us on business development, push people away to embrace your target market. The agenda, for those of you who don't know, we're going to be having a conversation. We're all here learning together. Write down those questions. There will be a Q&A at the end. And to start off, everyone can put into the chat, what is it that you're focusing on in your business? Where are you coming in from today? Or what it is that you do. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Yaacov Steinberg. When I first went into full-time coaching, sales coaching about 4.5+ years ago now, I noticed that people were able to build 6-7 figure businesses on their own. They're good at what they do. They're passionate. Some point along the way, they learned how to speak to people. But they'd hit this glass ceiling, either because they were making it up as they went along, but they didn't want to be that stereotypical used car salesperson, sleazy, pushy, stuff like that. And that's kind of where I came into the picture. Mindset, technique, skills, really helping people to have that confidence and clarity in knowing who they needed to speak to, where to find them, what to say, how to say it, all in the right way to grow their business. I've had the pleasure of helping quite a number of people pretty well known on LinkedIn, whether it be Chaya Fishman, Hudi Bloch, Hudi Greenberger, Eli Bash, and many more. And thank God, the people that have worked with me have been able to grow at the 6-7 figure realm by even 50% in the first 60 days of working with me. Those at the $100,000 mark, give or take, have been able to grow by even 150% in the first 60 to 90 days. And solopreneurs just starting out, even doing only $4K a month, have been able to grow by 240% in the first 45 days. David, really excited to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and let's get the show on the road.
Sure. So for the past 20 years, I've been in marketing. Started out my career at doing Google Ads and digital marketing. We have a marketing company called Optimal Targeting, for those that don't know. And then about, I would say 5-6 years ago, I opened a branding agency called Brand Hero to provide people an alternative way to do branding, more strategic than I would say was being done. And now we currently offer branding, digital marketing, and CMO services to help people get the right strategy in place to be able to have an ROI. I guess, which is interesting because most people, when they think of branding, don't think of ROI. But I guess
Right.
I'm the unique person that thinks that way.
Yeah, 100%. It's always an interesting topic when we talk about branding and return on investment and how do you really look at all of that. But you know, as we named this podcast of business development, pushing people away, and we're coming at it a little bit from that marketing perspective as you spoke about. I think the first question that most of us would ask is, why are we trying to push people away?
So it's not that we want to push people away. It's just the most effective way of standing out in a market. So if you're able to know your value and know your worth and know who you're built for, so that if a person comes and he's not in line with what you're built for, it's just a matter of explaining to the person, you know, I'm sure there are people out there that are built for you. And I guess an example of it would be, client comes to us, says, I need a logo made. So I ask them, what's your budget? What are you trying to do? Do you have any particular strengths or something you're trying to bring out? Or so if the guy says that he's a brand new business and he's just trying to dabble and he doesn't really have a strength, he just wants something to look legitimate, I'll send him to, let's say, Hudi Bloch, and I'll say, she's going to do a design for you of a logo. She'll do an amazing job, much cheaper than me, and she's a better fit than I am. Because the people who come to me want us to be able to understand why they're effective, why people like them, who their customers are, and be able to set an expectation to get more of the same. Whereas if a person's going to come and they don't fit into your stack and they don't have the same benefits from it and they're not going to appreciate the value from it, they could choose to say, oh, wait, let me learn more. I mean, that's a great sales tactic. But what I find the real kicker is when they leave and they don't use you, they'll meet somebody later in the street and somebody will ask them, oh, who do I use for this? And they'll say, you know what? This guy was really clear with who he serviced. I wasn't a good fit, but I think you are. And he'll refer you because he understands you're in this box and you service the people that are in that box in a certain way. And when you do that on your personal brand or on your regular brand, you earn that extra margin why a person will pay more. If I want to, and that's why people niche, right? Niching is a
Right.
great example of this idea because if I only focus on people that want red bicycles, I could then help people get the right color of the red they want. Whereas if I sold everything, I would never even get to the exact color because
Right.
you want red or green, right? But if there's a subset that actually cares about something specific and you cater to that, you'll have everything already for that person to get the perfect solution to him, as opposed to being everybody to everything. And that's really, I guess, the fundamental concept of it, is that when you know your strength and you know what you're good at, you could set an expectation to the world and push away the people that aren't. So the way to start is approach it thinking, what's the 30% of the market that I want to service intentionally? And who's the 70% that really don't work well with me, that are the biggest hangups, the people that are most frustrated with the way I do it, and are not going to be happy when they go through this service, either because I'm too expensive or because I'm giving them not enough attention or too much attention, or I'm built wrong for them. And when you have that clarity and you're able to explain to a person when you first meet him, then you're a brand. Then you attract the right people. An example of it would be, look at any brand in the world. Let's say Liquid Death or Red Bull or anything. They're very specific. Red Bull's targeting extreme sports people. If you're an accountant and you want to feel that way, then we're a good fit. But if you're an accountant and you don't want to feel that way, then we're not a good fit. They're not pretending to be the energy drink for accountants and skydivers. They're
Right.
saying, no, we're the energy drink for people that want to rush. And if you want to feel that way, right, aspirationally, or you are that way, then we're a good fit. But if you're not, then I'd rather you not drink our drink, because you're going to give us a bad review and you're going to be frustrated because we're all about that and we're going to turn you off. And in culture, in a business, the people you want inside your business building your business should be in line with what you want. And if you're able to articulate to the people internally, this is who we are, this is how we operate, you'll attract the people that appreciate that, and you'll push away the ones that are going to destroy your company from within. So it applies internally and externally. And I always say that marketing starts internally, because if you have to create something internally, create a strength internally, that then you could then set an expectation for the world, so that when they experience it, it's true. Marketing is not what I used to think, or what some people think, that it's just a facade to say something that or a sales, right? Say something that attracts somebody and get the sale, and whatever happens afterwards, who cares?
Yeah, and it's I spoke about this when I mentioned, that we were going to go into this topic when I was posting on LinkedIn, that at the end of the day we want people that truly value what it is that we have to offer. And by pushing away the people that aren't a fit, we're making room for that ideal customer, whereby if we just took everybody and anybody, well, first of all, we'd end up with a lot of people that aren't just, they're going to be difficult to handle. They're not going to be so excited about what we're doing. They're not going to appreciate it. And we're also losing out on the people that really are that way when it comes to our service, and they would be taking that slot otherwise. And it's kind of like thinking of it like a party. Like, I won't want everybody to be there. I want people who are going to share my interests. They're going to be excited to be around. And it's kind of that same idea as like, who are the people that are your tribe, your pack, the people that you want around you? Those are the people that you want to be talking to. You want to talk to them in order for them to want to be in that space, talking to their points. Um, and I think that that's a very important piece, which then leads into like, how do we go through that process of pushing people away? How, going into that next step, what would that process look like?
Yeah, so just to add on to what you just said, and they'll pay the
Right.
most,
No,
by the way.
100%.
In other words, if they appreciate what you've built and it's for them, then they don't have a problem with pricing. Sometimes people have a problem with pricing. It's because they're talking to the wrong target market. But really, where do you start, right? So you start with, you have to first understand what your strength is. So those who have not been in business for more than 3 to 5 years, I say 3 to 5 years is when a person generally finds their rhythm of who they service, or who likes the way you service them on a personality level. Then you're able to start either talking to your existing clients, or trying to understand that there's ways of doing it, right? So you could look through archetypes, you could go through different strength profiles, but the idea really is figure out what your strength is, figure out who it is that your target market is, figure out what you're servicing them, and figure out a way that it makes sense. So what we do, I'll say my process. Everyone has their own process, but our process is we start with understanding what the personality is of the person, right? So are they the person who's the hero and he's coming to solve people's problems? Is he the caregiver that's coming to support people? Is he the explorer that helps try on different things? There's so many different personality types, and the first time is trying to understand who you are. right? First, on a personality level, figure out who you are. Once you have that, you go to the next level. If that's your personality, then where do you disproportionately invest your time, money, effort, R&D? Where do you play? And that's also often where people will discover what their passions are, is, but if you see where you spend the most time trying to fix, is it systems, is it finding the newest technology, is it spending time on the phone, is it face-to-face time, like what is it that you find that you're really over delivering on, that other people in your industry stop at a certain point where you go a little further. And I use as examples is some people have customer service overseas and some people choose to do it here, right? That's a choice. That's a disproportionate investment. Costco's return policy is a disproportionate investment. They're choosing to take something back where everybody else in the industry will never take it back 4 years later. That's unheard of. They do because that's who they are. So you have to figure out for yourself, where are you willing to go further than anyone else in your industry, because that's what you are built like. And then figure out who appreciates that, right? Who appreciates what you just built, right? You took personality, layered it with function and disproportionate investment. Who really appreciates that? And then you find the people in the market that appreciate it. Now, if you can't, then maybe you have a problem. You're not finding your product fit in the market. You might have to change something, but it has to come both ways. You have to find the customer and you have to find what you're offering. Some people start by the customer, and then that's a trap because they end up pushing themselves in to fit in what they think the customer wants, as opposed to the way it should be is figure out what you offer, figure out who you are, and then figure out, is there a market for that is natural synergy of it. And when you find that, you have the perfect fit and the perfect offer, you're then able to then go set those expectations, go to market with it. That's really the process that
Yeah,
we
and
use.
I think it's a very powerful process when you go through that to understand, what it is that exactly you go through. I mean, Hoodie Bluch, we mentioned her earlier, right? So she does this as well. She did my branding actually. So my primary archetype is Sage, and the secondary is Hero. And in going through that process, it really gives clarity in terms of what is the role that we're trying to play for others. What is the messaging thereby that we want to give to others when we're talking to them, and how we interact with those people, right? And ultimately what that does, in my understanding of having gone through this process, and you've been doing this for a long time, so you're right on the money in the fact that, like, I realized myself, like, even when I first started, like, I thought I had an understanding, and it was really only when I was, in business for a good 3-5 years, I would say probably around year 4, that I really had solid clarity on what it was that I was doing for people on a much deeper level, that really allowed me to start talking to those points that allowed me to really stand apart from others, right? Bringing out my own unique personality into the mix and what it is that I was trying to bring to people, as opposed to, what is it that I thought they wanted from me, right? Which is the role I think a lot of us take on right in the beginning, is what do I think others want me to do? What do I think others want me to look like? And only later, as we get comfortable in the role and we start growing, are we like, okay, now let me step back into the shoes that I belong in and really understand who am I supposed to be, and whoever wants to appreciate that, they'll come to me, right? It's a very important way of doing it.
Right. Which is why
Exactly.
you ended up niching. Your niche is a
Yeah,
great example
100%.
of that. Yeah. And we've done this process. We've done this process for salespeople, for branding, for business owners. It's really the same idea. Anybody who's in business needs to go through the process of understanding it, because it makes them
Yeah, for
more
sure.
effective.
Because the way that you communicate with people, like when I go through an ideal client profile or a dream client with my own clients to understand who is it that they want to talk to, it's not just understanding, a lot of people, okay, what type of car do they drive and all these other things. Like, you want to understand what are the key things that make them, the key characteristics that make them ideal. You want to understand their pain points, their desires, what's most important to them. But you also want to go into the psychographics. And that's really where you're going to be able to talk to them in a way that they're going to connect to, because they're going to feel like you're reading their mind. And you can only do that when you understand who you are and what you want to be talking about. And then you can connect that with the people that you want to be serving.
Yeah, and I say the most powerful thing you could do in marketing or sales is tell people what you are before they tell
Mm,
you what they need.
interesting.
Because once they open their mouth and they tell you what they need, they think you're selling them. But if you could tell them before you say anything, I just want to let you know who I'm built for, and then they say, "Well, that's exactly what I need," then you sold the person, because you allowed for them to understand that I'm built in a certain way and I'm focused on a certain type of deliverable to get a certain type of outcome. If you're able to provide that for people before they tell you what's bothering them and before they tell you what they want, they will trust you more and they'll realize that they came to the right address. And that is what turning people away does. It allows for that sale to go much smoother, because for those that you are a good fit for, you close faster, you resonate better because they realize that you meant that. And I tell you, if you have literature, you could even send it
Mm,
over first and show them something that's prepared. Like, I didn't make this right now. I have this because this is what we do for people like you. I've been through this, and that is what people want. Marketing is really about, I mean, business in general is about removing risk. And how the bigger the problem that you solve, the more money you make. But the people who hire people is, what risk are you going to remove, and what's the likelihood that you're going to achieve that? And the more you could show me that you're built for that, and you've done it before, and you're prepared for my particular problem,
right.
the more I'll trust you.
Interesting. So let's delve a little bit into that, right? So what does it look like when I take my marketing into an offer that will push people away, and I go directly into that piece that you're mentioning of, this is what I do? What does that look like specifically? Let's delve into that a little bit more.
So what it looks like is you end up leaning into it. So everyone starts with what I call the muddle middle, right? Your product is going to be built for the whole market. Now, if I wanted to build the product for either the richer or the poorer, right, or the people who are more eccentric and they need a particular layering of use case, I think today in services, we're in the world of layering. So you have a guy who's a CPA, and he got fired and he became a lawyer, and now he opens a company saying, I service CPAs for law because I was a CPA and I understand your needs better, right? You have a lot of that happening where people are layering on two different
Mm-hmm.
disciplines to create a third, right? You have there's so many examples of it, that what's going to happen is that your clarity of what you're offering to who becomes clearer and clearer and sharper when you start
Got it.
doing that.
So effectively, it's really about the understanding the message that you want to give over to people and who specifically needs to hear that message, and that's going to really play the biggest role in terms of the marketing and the way that you're going to frame that for people when you're speaking to them. Is that right?
So so I'll answer the question a little better. So if you're going to take your product that's $5, right, and say, if I went all in on 20% of the market, this 20% of the market doesn't want a $5 product. They want a $30 product,
Okay.
but that it should never break. Can I do that? And the answer is yes, I could build it that way. I'll use better material. But now I have a product that is stronger, but it's meant for that. Now, everyone understands on a product that there's a designer. And that designer made an investment, and then he's stuck because he already ordered that inventory. So he has to sell a certain thing. With services, we believe that we could
Mm-hmm.
keep changing based on who we're talking to, because it's easier to sell. And that's the mistake. The mistake is you need to treat it like a product where you have to decide today, this is what it is that you're selling for who, and don't change it. And by doing that, now you created a product that's more expensive because it has something in it. And it's just a matter of sticking to your guns and saying, I'm not going to change the way I do business because I'm talking to you. I'm going to find the people that want the way I'm doing it,
Right.
is the shift, right? So I'm able to tell a person, I'm sorry, this is the cost of the item. And the reason why I do it is because I give you so much support that makes sure it doesn't fail. And I can't do
Right.
that unless I charge you more, right? I can't do that unless I have a separate customer success person. But if you don't need that because you're just starting out and you're a whiz and you can do it yourself, then we're not built for you, right? We're built for the people that need the help, but they don't have the time to do it. And therefore, they need that extra guy who's going to come down and install it themselves for you. So it's really about understanding that when you decide to go all in on one area or one way of doing something, you're really turning away everyone else. But for those that need it, they appreciate it because they're really looking for someone who will service me in this
Right.
particular
I
way,
think
because
it's
that's
very
what that
important
person needs.
the way that you phrase that, because a lot of people get confused when they talk about niching or niching, in the sense that they fall into this hole where, oh, I can only talk to this specific person right now. And the reality is, like what you said, it's not the specific person necessarily. It's what you're doing, not who you're doing it for. It's the way that you're doing it, right? So for myself, as an example, I a lot of times work with people in the creative space, people in web development, people in branding, photography, all those types of things. But I have many, many clients in all different types of industries. I do it in a specific way, but it's not the who that it's specific for. There are many people that can benefit from that. Is that right?
Yeah, so we have a process in our that we do archetypes. We choose 3 different archetypes: one for your motivation, one for your process, and one for your perception. And by getting clarity on each of those 3 things, you'll realize that those resonate with people differently. So your process might be, some people, let's say in the creative space, some writers will send out a Calendly link for an appointment 2 months later and a form that you fill out with 5 pages. Now, to me, that turns me off. But I might not
Right.
be the target market for them. They might be looking for somebody that likes to work like that, right? And by them pushing me away, they're attracting the people that
Right.
like to work in the way that they do it. But for me, I prefer a different way. So I'll go to someone else. But that's what business is understanding that your process and your motivation and the way you want the world to see you and what you put out there as expectations all kind of create a story that you're attracting inbound people that resonate with it. And that's really what it's about, because outbound marketing keeps changing based on who you're talking to. Inbound is about putting out there what you are and
Right.
allowing your tribe to find you. And if you never made that decision of going out to the world and saying this is what we are, this is who we're built for, your tribe will never be able to come to you because you're
Right.
everything
And
to
it's the
everybody,
same concept
which
that
means
we
you're
say
nothing.
in all areas of business. If you're saying, if everyone is fine with what you're saying, then you're not saying anything, right? Because that's how you stand out,
Right.
right? The
So
way that you stand out in the market is by saying something that you stand for that's going to be different than what other people are going to say. And it's not necessarily the most PC thing that is going to come out of your mouth. It shouldn't be, right? You're trying to push certain people away.
right. Right. So we use this approach in our advertising. When we do ads, our litmus test
Right.
is, can you take the logo away, put your competitor's logo there, and it still makes sense? And if it does make sense, then it's a bad ad, because you haven't figured out that 20% that you're attracting and that 75% you're turning away, because you're just trying to go after everybody. And then you're stuck in the same category. I know 40 mortgage brokers. Why you? And you're still not capturing that person who you want to go after. So it's really about trying to figure out what, on a strategic level, can I do that will attract the right person. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going after, what can I do that makes the most noise, or what can I do that attracts the most people, and their mindsets are really hurting them in their marketing efforts.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
not
and
helping them.
I've definitely heard you speak about this before, where if you could take away the logo and put in someone else's, then it's not branded. It's an ad, but it's not branded to you because you're not saying anything that's special. And I think that's a very big piece that I think so many people miss out on, is that you need to be saying things that are going to push people away. I mean, how do you stand out in your own way? What do you guys do?
So we provide strategy. So if a person doesn't want strategy and just wants design, or just wants writing, or wants, honestly, if you have an idea that you want someone to go and execute, we're not a good fit for you. But if you want somebody that you could explain the idea and they'll tell you their opinion and they'll help guide you, then we're a good fit. So we know with clarity that there are certain people we're just not built for, because they don't want to hear our strategy. They just want whatever
Right.
they drew on a napkin for you to make. And we know we're not a good fit for those people. But it's about understanding it. Now, is there times where you want to make an ad that works for everybody? Yeah, sure, if you have distribution. Whereas if you're a supermarket, if you're selling in a supermarket and you have distribution and you're a commodity and you're trying to sell to everybody, then yeah, that's the right approach. Make the most noise you can, because or if you have a used sales team, yeah, make the most noise you can, because the goal of the ad is not to convert everybody, just so that when your sales guy says, "Oh, I work for ABC," you say, "Oh, I've heard of them." That's the goal. The goal isn't ever to convert, but if you want ads that convert, you have to say something different that makes people realize that you're a better fit for them than the competitor. And today, there's so many people competing for your attention, and there's so little, there's so few people that do something specifically different, that if you're not clear to people to teach them who you're good at, what you're bad at, then they're just
Yeah,
going
and
to go to the competitor.
it's always funny when we have these conversations with people, because so many people are just used to making a lot of noise, and they don't understand what's wrong with just making noise. Because at the end of the day, if you're just going to make noise, but you're not coherent and you're not speaking to the specific people you need to be talking to, and I told this to a client today, right? You don't want to be singing the same song everybody else is and selling the same thing just with a new sticker on it, even though effectively you're selling the same service. But you need to be loud and coherent to those specific people that you want to talk to, or you're not going to get anywhere, right? And it's a huge difference. I think so many people don't understand this concept that you just spoke about, which is what is wrong with noise. It's that you're not actually saying anything. You're just going to get drowned out by the rest of it, right? You're not adding anything and you're not saying anything.
So, so the trap is that you look at big brands and you say, "Oh, I'm going to do what they're doing. I'm going to be Coca-Cola," but you don't realize Coca-Cola owns the shelf. They own distribution. They don't need to differentiate. They have the shelf. So if you go down the aisle, you have a choice: Coke or Pepsi, right? Now, if you're a brand new soft drink company and you're trying to break into the market, you can't do the same thing as Coke is doing and be effective. And be effective. It just doesn't work. You have to do what Liquid Death did and don't go totally radical to attract an audience that, yeah, I want to look cool holding a can of water. It was a totally different demographic they were going after, and they built a huge company from it that Coke can never do because Coke is trying to Coke on the archetypal level, right? If you want to look at that, they're trying to be what's the biggest market share that I could take that still attracts people, and by the way, they turn people away. It's just who they choose to turn away is much safer, right? So if you look at what they go after, they go for innocence and sharing happiness. Now, there are people who want to be sad. If you want to be by a funeral, please don't serve Coke. But if you want to have a happy time, serve Coke. That's what they took. That's the stance they took. Now, is there room for a disruptor to go ahead and say, we're for the times where you want to be unhappy? When you're down in your dumps and you're miserable and you're at a wake, serve this drink. Yeah, sure. But that's a 10% of the market. They want 80%, 90% of the market. So they chose to go that way. That's what people don't understand. It's about understanding what they're choosing to alienate and where they choose to go after. That everyone's doing it. That's what a brand does. And that's where people sometimes go wrong. They say, "Oh, I'm being like Coke. I'm just making a lot of noise." But they don't realize there's a science behind the noise.
I was also thinking of Liquid Death as you were telling the example of Coke, and then you brought in Liquid Death because they're, I think, one of the best examples in today's day and age where a company went to sell water and completely destroyed and just took over an entire piece of the market. Right? Where before it wasn't anything cool, there wasn't anything exciting about water. It was water. It's boring. What is there exciting about water? And they took this idea and they made, skulls and fire and all these different pieces that they said, no, we're going after a very specific crowd of people and we're going to do it in a very specific way where our marketing is going to be bold and we're going to do all these things that are going to attract a very specific crowd. And they're huge today, right? And they've done it in a relatively short time. Specifically because, like you said, it wasn't about just making noise. It was about doing it in a way that was coherent to the people who needed to hear that noise in the right way.
Right. They were actually using design to solve a problem. I've heard people quote Liquid Death and say, "Oh, you could just take anything and make it, edgy, and you'll have a brand." And the answer is no. It's the fact that they use design to solve a problem. They had a problem that people were at concerts, they were at these upscale places, and they didn't like the fact they were holding a Poland Spring bottle. They wanted to look cool because everyone else is holding energy drinks. So they designed a water bottle that looks like an energy drink to solve a problem, and the distribution went along with it because they were able to charge triple the price for it. So they adopted it. But if they didn't have the distribution and they didn't have the problem, they wouldn't have been successful.
No, it's a very good point to bring out. It's also there was some sort of there was also some part of it, I think, to do with the fact that they didn't want to be with bottles also from an ecosystem problem. Is that right? Also, I'd heard that at some point. It wasn't the goal.
That's not really what went along. It's not really what sold. That really isn't what. Yeah. Again, there's always secondary markets, but their primary market was.
There's this concept that I've heard, branding with personality. What exactly does that mean for those of us who might not understand it? Right.
So we touched a little bit about a Coke. It's really about what does your brand feel like emotionally, and who does that resonate with? So Coke has pictures of people smiling and happy, and they're going after that demographic. Whereas Pepsi, originally they changed, but originally they were going after the voice of new generation. They were going after a much younger demographic, and they went with
Right.
humor. They went with being the jester. They were trying to make people feel a totally different vibe, a more youthful vibe. So you have two companies, different personalities, selling the same product, really, and the approach to the market resonated with different types of people. You want to go with celebrity and entertainment and humor? That was Pepsi, but that's a younger, hipper thing. Coke went with more of innocence and established and tried and true, and the type of thing you'd want around your family, more of a family cohesive vibe that they went with. So on a personality level, that was their whole play. Who do you resonate with? And on a micro level, you want to find again your tribe, and Black Death Coffee, Liquid Death, Bones Coffee, Black Rifle Coffee. They really went that direction of I want to find a group of people that are gun enthusiasts, that are grunge, that want to associate with that vibe. Harley Davidson, right? It's that vibe of a personality that they're trying to resonate with, and either aspirational or because it's their fit. It doesn't have to be the guy who dresses like a Harley Davidson guy, the guy who likes it. It could be it's the guy who's the opposite and needs that
Hmm.
aspirational to balance him out a little bit. But it's the idea of this product. Who does it
Got it.
emotionally
And
appeal
it's
to?
a fascinating topic at the end of the day, because in sales we say it's a very big part of it is in sales that we say that people buy because of emotion and they back it up with logic, right? So when you're selling to the emotion, which is the whole point of branding with personality, is you're selling to the emotional side of anybody who's going to look at this. And I think that so many people miss out on this piece where they don't touch the emotion at all. They are solely based on facts. It's very dry. There's not any juice to it, and people they need that emotional piece, and it's actually a lot easier to bring out stories when you're trying to bring out that emotional piece as well, which is a big piece of marketing in and of itself.
So it's funny. A lot of people today say, "Why am I spending so much money on branding? It makes no sense. I could just go to
Right.
Canva and take a finished product and use that, or I could go to AI." And the answer is because if you're looking for a cliche emotion that you
Right.
just slap on, then great, go for it. It's very easy to create that. But if you're looking for something that's more nuanced, that fits you, then it's a custom bespoke suit. You're going to spend more for that for someone to create that. That's why the branding people out there that present five different options, totally different options with different personalities, or say, show me what you like, and then they go ahead and they make it, aren't really doing branding per se, right? They're not trying to figure out what's internally and expressing it. They're really just allowing you to choose what you want that looks pretty. And I wouldn't call that branding. It's I don't know what it is, but it's not branding. I guess that's design. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who are going into the industry call themselves branding people, but they're doing it like this. Like I had a clothing store that came to us and they showed me the four different options. And I'm like, how could a branding person tell you that these are your four options? There
Right.
are four different personalities. Don't you have to choose first what you want to be and then express it? And it's almost like they work backwards. They say, here's your options of the company you might want to
Right.
become. Choose what style you like and then become that. But you can't change your personality
The suit's
as
not
fast
going to
as you could
fit.
change that. Like you have to be really, yeah, you have to be really conscious of what you're offering and who you're offering it. So much so that I don't believe that corporate America does that. I think they hire for the personality they want. They build the people around it, and they say, okay, follow that direction. Most small businesses, you're stuck with who you are. Your best bet is to find something that resonates with your personality, and then find a design that sets expectation for your brand. To make a brand and then tell you to fit to try to wear it, and when it's not you, doesn't work. It's gonna fit like a bad suit.
Yeah,
But
and
unfortunately, a lot of people are doing
I
that.
think that the suit example is a great piece, because if you're trying to step into someone else's shoes, they're not going to fit. Right? It's the same idea as the suit, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, like we said earlier, you have your song to sing and nobody else can sing it. And if you're trying to be someone else, if you're trying to be the next, whoever it is that you look up to, you're not that person. And as much as you try to be that person, as much as you try to sound like that person, as much as you try to look like that person, you're not that person. And it's just at some point it's gonna stop working, right? I think that's one of the biggest things that people come to terms with. And I think it happens, like you said, around that fourth year, they try to do a certain thing, and then all of a sudden it stops working because they're not attracting the people they need to be, because people are showing up and they're seeing that you're something else, and that's not what they signed up for, right? It's like these, this is a great example, I think, that people on LinkedIn that have others ghostwriting for them, the problem comes in when the ghostwriter isn't actually trying to sound like the person they're trying to talk from. And then someone gets in a meeting and you sound like someone else entirely.
You have that with
Yeah, it's the
design.
exact
You
same
have that
thing.
with designers also. You have that with designers also. You have certain
Mm-hmm.
designers that they have a signature style, and they do the same thing for everybody, as opposed to, you know, we always try to do. I want
Right.
to make it that you can't tell my style, because whatever the client is, that's what we are. Because we're not
Exactly.
expressing ourselves; we're expressing what the client is, and that's why I'll take competitors. I have 4 different kitchen cabinet companies that we represent. Why? Because I'm not selling them. I'm just putting on for them an expression of what they are. So I could take competitors because I'm not inventing ideas that I think the market wants to hear.
Right.
I'm inventing ideas that fit for you.
Yeah, and I
So
think
it's a
that
totally
fits right
different
into the next
process.
question in terms of fitting that into business development itself, right? How does all of this fit into business development? I think you just touched on that, which is, the factor of when you're going to have 4 different soup companies, cabinet companies, kitchen companies that you're working with. That's perfectly fine because each one's going to have their own way that they're going to come across to the market, right?
Right. So what is business development, right? Business development is the offers, the strategic partnerships, and I would say the disproportionate investments you choose to bring into your company. So if you're guided by your brand and you know what your brand is meant to over deliver at, then you're able to guide those strategic business development
Right.
in that direction, right? So when you know what you are, you're able to develop. When you don't know what you are, you're developing in different areas, and especially if you have partners, he develops you this way, you develop this way, and you end up compromising on the middle. It's awful, right? So you can't grow unless you understand what you're trying to grow.
Yeah, and I think that you really hit the nail on the head there. I mean, like the fact that you truly need to understand what you're trying to grow before you can do it. I think that that's a fantastic line, and so many people, they don't understand that concept at all. It goes right over their head, and they end up losing out because of it, because they're not being clear in any of the ways that they're trying to communicate with people. And it hurts them in the long run. I mean, in the short run, it might work, but it's only going to work for so long until it starts falling apart at the seams.
Right? There's so many brands that I've seen cannibalize themselves by bringing on a high priced item, a low priced item, an item that was good quality, an item that was bad quality, and you end up with like I have no impression of your brand. Or even like there's this nonprofit that every time they do a charity event, they do a different branding on it.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't even know what you are anymore. You're nothing. As opposed to you look at, let's say, Good Grips, and a simple thing that you know that if they were to go ahead and create a mouse, I know that it would be rubberized and it would have those wedges in it, because I know that that's what they do to everything, and I know it would be black and white. That OXO Good Grip, I know what colors it would be. I know what it would feel like. I know the who it was built for. I know it would be more rugged. Like I know. How do I know that? Right? Because they have a brand. And the example I always like to give is the jelly donut. Right? If you went to your local bakery before Hanukkah, can you imagine what donut they're selling? Are they selling the artisanal one for $30? Are they selling Bubby's old Heimish one with jelly in it? Or are they selling something like meat inside? Like what is it? And you should be able to answer the question before you even go into the store, right? You know, sesame does that, and you know this does that, because there's an expectation for the style of the type of things that they do. That's a brand. So you need to figure out for yourself, what is your jelly donut? And if your brand can't answer, what is your jelly donut, or what is your donut, then you don't know with clarity what you are. So you don't know what to build. You don't know what to create. You don't know what products to bring in. You don't have any direction. You end up stuck in your middle from fear, and you don't take risk. And risk is how you
Yeah,
innovate.
and this goes right into the next piece that I was going to go into, which is how do I make my marketing last longer and be more effective? I'll hand it over to you, but I think that what you were just saying, like, is exactly that piece. That's exactly the answer.
Yeah. So that, and I would say what really works well that people don't utilize enough is offers. If you understand the mechanics of how your business works, and you understand how you make money and you understand the gears, you should be able to create an offer that attracts the right type of people to you, right? So you asked me before I came on, is there an offer I want to offer to the audience? And I said, yeah, I would love to offer a 30-minute consultation with me. And why do I pick that? Because if I'm a strategist and I'm able to show you 30 minutes of showing you how I can help guide you and prove my worth to you before you even buy,
Right.
then you'll buy quicker, right? But let's say that wasn't my thing. Let's say I was all about price. I would never offer
Right.
you a 30-minute consultation. You don't want to talk to me. You want a discount, right? So understanding the offer and understanding of how to present something is huge. Like we did an offer for a mechanic. We gave them a limited time offer for oil change subscription, $100 a year, and you get two oil changes, your whole oil changes for a year, and they threw in tire rotation and windshield wipers and a bunch of other things. And they had like 300 people sign up in the first month, and they stopped it. And they said, now people are like, when's the next time you're doing
Right.
it? Like, we're waiting for it because the offer set them up in such a smart way. And to the point where even competitors were like, does the math work? Does it make sense? Does it do it? And he said back to me, he says, I don't care if it works or not. That marketing was better than
Right.
any ad I could have done. Because I said something that others weren't willing to, I offered something that something others weren't willing to offer, which positioned me in the market in a certain way that gave value to people. And people do not give enough value to other people. They want to hold the value away, and they want to just say noise. And that's where people fall short a lot. They don't
Yeah, and
deliver
I
enough
think
value.
this is a huge piece when it comes to the whole LinkedIn conversation, right? Like I had someone say to me the other day, sent me a message. He goes, I understand you're putting out, all this value. Aren't you afraid that people are just gonna, be able to do it on their own? And like, I want to be able to give more value, but I'm so concerned. I was like, you missed the whole point of what the value is. They need you for implementation. Knowledge is free. Give all the value you can and put it all out there. You're not giving them every single little tiny thing that they could possibly do, right? But when you're giving proper value,
I'll tell you the real
that's how they're
secret.
going to want to come to you because they're going to get a taste. And then they're going to be like, oh, I want another piece of cake, please. Go for it.
I want to add on to what you said. The real value is not even the guy. It's not for the guy that steals it. For the guy that takes it and implements it,
True.
he was never going to be your customer
Right.
anyway. He likes to do things himself. Who's it for? When someone asks him, can you do it for me? Oh, no, I'm too busy.
Right.
Go to him. He taught me. That's where you get it. Those referrals from the people that learn from you are more valuable than the guy who tries it. That's not even the guy. From what my experience is, it's the referrals from the people who appreciate what you offered because they utilize it themselves and they understand what you're really doing. When someone comes to
Right.
them, they don't have time to do it for everybody.
Yeah,
They'll send you the
I
business.
think that a big part of that is really understanding, like we said earlier, who are you really talking to? Right, like you said, the person that is going to take it and do it themselves, you were never talking to them. They were never going to be your client anyways, because they're
Correct.
the type of person that likes to just DIY it. They're going to figure it out. They're going to learn from this person, learn from that person, and kind of just figure it out as they go along. But like you said, either they themselves or all those people that can't do that or don't want to do that or don't have the time to do that, those are going to be the people that you're talking to. And those are the people that are going to be attracted to you in that way.
Yeah. And honestly, when you hit a certain level, you realize your time is the most valuable asset you have. And yeah, sure, you could learn it and do it yourself and go through the learning curves,
Right.
or you could just hire someone who's been through it already and save yourself all that gap. And the more sophisticated business owners recognize that, and they say, I just want somebody who has the experience, who has done this successfully time and time again. I'd rather pay extra and know what
Right.
I'm getting
Yeah,
than
100%. And
roll the dice.
I think, going into my next question here is, how does market research fit into all of this? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, like one of the things that I think so many people miss is what is the actual research that they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so after you have clarity on what it is, then you actually could go ahead and talk to your clients, talk to your potential people, get a feeling for what it is, test different types of offers where you get the real market research. You could do a survey. I had a client once we wanted to do a survey for. They were like, okay, what are we surveying? And they were so clueless. They didn't even know what to put on a survey because we don't even know what our goal is. We don't even know where we're going, what we're trying to do. But once we sat down and we went through the process and we were able to make a survey, they were able to get real insights from people because they were asking the right questions. So, I mean, I think market research is a little bit underappreciated in our world, but I think it's starting to become more and more of a thing. But you really have to understand that you have to market research the right people. You can't just blanket everybody, and you get a lot of false positives that way because who's to say the person who answered you was the person you wanted to talk to, right? And you have to make sure you zero in, and you have to make sure you know what you're trying to litmus test against it. We do a lot of market research that once we go through the branding process, we want to make sure it's true. Because I find sometimes people will tell you something, either they don't know or they fool themselves. And when you do the research, you find a whole different layer to the onion that you never even saw.
Find that often? I mean, like when you're doing that research and all of a sudden you've done this whole process, you've gotten to the market research and all of a sudden you find that it's completely opposite of what they said?
So there are times with people that weren't honest through the process. The people that told you the answers what they thought the person who was successful was.
Wow.
Those people I find that with, yes. But most people, we've learned how to get a little bit better at it, to not allow them to take it because we want them to prove it. In other words, we'll challenge them and say, okay, if that's true, show me where you did the research, where you did the extra investments, and they can't. So we use then this part to get richer stories, better ways of backing it up. But
so that deep dive
that's really the process.
After they've already gone through the branding in your process.
In my process, yes. In other people's process, right. Most branding agencies will do a deep dive first because they think that they're trying to sell the market, and that's not what we do. Right. We sell you to the market.
Fascinating.
So we go the other way around.
Yeah,
and we found it more
effective. The way that you're doing it, where you're trying to bring out their specific, unique voice, you just want to make sure that the market sees them that way, as opposed to the other way around, where they want to understand, okay, what does the market need? Okay, let's sound like that. Okay, great, now, perfect. But in reality, you're now not being you, and you miss the whole point. Right, because it's not you.
You can't deliver
so,
it.
Like we said before, it's like someone is a ghostwriter, they're making you sound all extroverted on LinkedIn, and they get into a meeting with you, and you can't string two sentences together. Right?
Yeah, so it's a great story that goes along with that. I was by Mint Capital, and somebody challenged our branding once, and he was saying, well, it doesn't make sense. You're doing it this way. I said, this process creates an interesting result. We have a slogan out there. All you need to do is sign, and we take care of the rest. Go read the reviews. The reviews, people are saying, all I needed to do was sign, and they took care of the rest. Because you created an expectation. They actually felt that strength delivered through the process, and then they referred based on it, and they reviewed based on it because they recognized that you fulfilled the expectation. That's when you know you have a true brand. When you're able to have the cohesiveness, when you set an expectation and the person doesn't experience it, they'll complain even if everything else was good. Because
it's very similar. I mean, the whole reason this podcast, effectively is called Win More on Purpose. That's the tagline of my own business. And time and time again, people, after they had worked with me, right, when I got to that point, they kept saying, I have purpose. I understand what it is that I'm trying to do. And it was on purpose, right? There's those two pieces to it. It was within their own purpose, and it was intentional. Right? And they all of a sudden they knew what they need to do. They had that confidence and clarity in terms of having that understanding. Right? So it's that same piece where when you know who it is you're talking to, when you know what it is that you're trying to say to them, and what it is that you stand for, which is the basis of the whole entire piece, that's when you want to go make sure and double check that everything that your clients are telling you matches up with that.
Yeah. And the last piece I would add in is a lot of people think that they have the clarity. They might, but their employees do not. And a lot of people sometimes fool themselves into thinking that they're different than they really are, because they want to be something else. They want to be, they don't want to be pigeonholed into a particular niche, and they're not willing to accept the fact that they're built better for that. Go all in on them while you're trying to attract those that don't really appreciate you.
I want to delve a little bit more into that. Let's open the floor for Q&A. Everyone can put into the chat any questions that they have. In the meantime, let's delve into that a drop more, what you were just saying, while we'll wait for any questions to come in. They don't want to pigeonhole themselves. Tell us a little bit more about that concept.
So it often, let's say an Amazon seller, would come and say, the way you're
Mm-hmm.
successful with Amazon is you find a category and you service everybody in that category, you get the most volume as you can. So their mentality is, I want to build something that appeals
Right.
to the broadest market possible.
Right.
And a brand is the opposite of that. So when you have an Amazon guy who says, I want to go off of Amazon and I want to sell my own products on my website, I want to sell on social media, you'll find that friction. Very few Amazon sellers could ever become a brand because their mindset is trapped in commodity, appeal to everybody,
Right.
because that's
As
what made them
opposed to those
successful on
that are creating
Amazon.
more of a brand, and then they have what to take it off. They have what to do within the multi-channel because you actually stand for something. You're unique. You have a brand. You
They're
stand
unique.
apart from everyone else in what it is that they're doing, and therefore all of a sudden you can actually say something, and therefore you can take it off Amazon and actually be successful. And that's a very, very clean way of putting it,
Right.
and that's very nice. Um, okay, so we have a question here. When it comes to business development, we mentioned earlier that it really comes down to um, offer, partnerships, and there was a third thing you mentioned. What was that third thing again?
So business development tends to be offers,
Products.
partnerships, and then products. Whereas what are you offer? What are you creating that's going to be a little bit different as a packaged service or related service or a product? Really should be born from your
Got it.
core of what your strength is. In other words, you would expect Liquid Death to come out with another product, maybe coffee, right? With the same branding, with the same vibe, with the same tie-in. But if they were to go and deviate from that, that would be a
Right.
mistake
So
on
the
their business
question over
development.
here was offers and products they understand. Their question was in terms of partnerships, right? So how does it play into partnerships?
Right, the partnerships. Yeah, so partnerships are huge. Being able to understand how to scale your business through strategic partnerships is one of the real ways that people grow. But not understanding what they have that you need and what you need that they have is a recipe for a disaster. And the only way to get that is if you understand your brand. You understand what you're trying to deliver on. Because sometimes you'll have a mismatch of ideologies, and therefore you're not a good fit. And the true partnerships should be where you're aligned with purpose of what you're trying to achieve. So if you find another brand, let's say this podcast is a great example of a strategic partnership between me and you, right? We both believe that strategy is the way that you're going to achieve, and by educating the masses is how we're going to get ahead. And therefore, this is a synergy between sales and marketing where everyone's going to be able to benefit from strategy to be able to move further ahead. It's a great partnership. Now, for me to go on Mr. Beast and have this
Right.
conversation would be a mismatch because
Right.
he's not about that. So I wouldn't get any leads or any sales from being in front of
Right. It's
the
about
wrong
picking the right
audience.
place to give over your message where people are actually interested in hearing what it is that you have to say because that's what they're there for. Fantastic. So I always
Right.
say in ending off on every single one of these podcasts that it's extremely important. I have a page of notes. If we would try to implement everything that's on my notes or anything that's on anybody's page of notes, which I'm sure everyone has, you're not going to get anywhere, right? Pick one thing that you're going to try to implement starting today, starting tomorrow, start today, and take it from there. Do one step at a time. Don't try to do everything at once because just like we said today, your brand is that specific piece. It's the same thing here. Try to pick that one thing, move forward with that. You mentioned earlier that you had an offer for everyone. You started touching on it a little bit ago. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you want to offer everyone here or everyone listening.
So I'm happy to provide everybody here, anybody listening at home, a free 30-minute consultation where I'm not selling you. I'll just try to guide you on what I believe is the right next steps for you to grow your business, either through partnerships, or through offers, or through strategy, or I'll show you where I think there's an opportunity or you're doing something wrong for free. If you find it valuable, great. Hopefully you'll want to continue with us. If you don't find it valuable, you heard a different opinion that you can now, you know, use yourself as a litmus test against to see if this is the direction. Maybe you're fit for a different direction. But that's what my offer is to everybody. I'm happy to give a 30-minute consultation to anybody who wants
I can
to
say that it's
take
a
advantage
very,
of it.
very valuable offer. So I hope that people take you up on it. I myself as well. I always say at the end of each podcast, this podcast is a place where we speak about things that are timely, interesting, that you can add to your skill set toolbox. If you loved this podcast, you could feel free to hit me up for a free 30-minute strategy session as well. Take your sales game to the next level. We are booked out, I believe, for like the next 2 weeks. So grab it while they're still there. But David, we really appreciate you coming on today. It was extremely impactful for myself, and I'm sure for everyone here and listening. And thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for coming.